we have done some radicals where we had to use the distributive property. Okay, so our next step is we're going to take this same idea and we're going to do FOIL. So here, this is what we did on Monday. We took the square root of 3 and we distributed it. We distributed it to square root of 6 and the square root of 12. So now what we're going to do is we're going to use FOIL, and we're going to do first, outer, inner, last, the same way we would is if we had variables in there. So if we had the 2x minus 5 and 2x plus 5, we would FOIL that. So we are going to FOIL the square root of 3 plus the square root of 5 times the square root of 2 plus the square root of 6. Okay? So, here we go. I am going to write it out and then we'll do the multiplication. So, my first, square root of 3 times square root of 2. Those are my first terms. My outer, square root of 3 times square root of 6. My inner, square root of 5 times square root of 2. And my last, square root of 5 times square root of 6. Okay? Now, like we talked about on Monday, if both numbers are inside the square root, we can multiply them together. If both numbers are outside the square root, we can multiply those together. So here I've got the square root of 3 times the square root of 2. That is the square root of 6. Then I've got the square root of 3 times the square root of 6, which is the square root of 18. Hopefully you're thinking, I might need to do something else with square root of 18. Hopefully that's just kind of your thought there. Square root of 5 times square root of 2, square root of 10. Square root of 5 times square root of 6 is square root of 30. Now, the question that we ask ourselves when we think we're done, can I simplify further? We always ask ourselves, can I simplify further? And hopefully, you kind of gone. Eat one each by each. Square root of 6, does it have a perfect square in it? No. Square root of 18, is there a perfect square in it?
Yes.
There is. What is it?
9 and 2.
9. 9 and 2. Okay? Now, if you weren't sure if 18 had a perfect square in it, you can always do your prime factorization. Okay? And your clue should be, if I've got 2 of something, then I've got a perfect square and I can pull one of them outside. So we do. That's one right there. Square root of 10, is there a perfect square in it? Square root of 30, perfect square. No. Okay. So I'm going to bring down my square root of 6. What is the square root of 9?
3.
Good. Okay, I bring down my square root of 10. And I bring down my square root of 30. This right here is my final answer. Nothing can be combined because they are not like terms. Okay? And nothing else can be simplified because in each individual square root, there is not a perfect square factor. Okay?
So even though all 3 of those are inside, you don't put them together at the end?
Because we're adding. If they were multiplication, yes. If we were multiplying square root of 6 times square root of 10 times square root of 30, then you could if you were multiplying. But it's just kind of like, think about variables.
Yeah.
If all those variables are different, we wouldn't combine them. And all of these, like square root of 6 is a different irrational than square root of 10. So we don't combine them because it's addition. That was a great question. Thank you. Okay, so that was kind of the last part of multiplying and kind of combining radicals. Now, we are going to look at solving equations. What makes this something I solve?
Equal sign.
The equal sign. Since I've got the equal sign, I've got to solve for x. So, that's how I know. And the directions say solve. Or, find the value of x, solve. Okay, but the equal sign is the clue. That's the clue that we are trying to find a value for x. Now, this looks different than some of the other equations that we've seen. We've got a radical in there. We've got a square root. Okay, so the process that we do, we have to kind of do two different things. The first thing that we have to do is we have to make sure the part of the equation under the radical, or the square root, is on one side of the equation. Okay? And in this one it is. 2x minus 5 is under the square root. We are taking the square root of 2x minus 5, and it is on one side of the equation. We have to do that first. The second thing that we do is we square both sides. Okay? We square both sides. So that's what I'm going to do now, is I'm going to square both sides. Now, if I've got the square root of 3 squared, what that means is the square root of 3 times the square root of 3. What is that? What's the square root of 3 times the square root of 3? 9. Is it 9 or is it the square root of 9? It's the square root of 9. And what's the square root of 9? 3. So when I square the square root of 3, what's my final answer? 3. Okay? It's what's inside the radical. Okay? So if I had the square root of x squared, what would I get? Just x. Okay? Just x. So when I square the square root of 2x minus 5, what do I get? 2x minus 5. Excellent. 2x minus 5. Okay, now, what is 7 squared? 49. You know how to solve this. Solve it. You got 1 minute to solve the rest of this equation. Okay, so I added 5 to both sides. I got 2x equals 54. I divided by 2. I got x equals 27. Okay? So it was solving a linear equation. Now, the thing that you have to do, the thing that is incredibly important in this right here, is we have to check our answers. We are going to get what's called extraneous solutions sometimes. Now, it's similar to what we did when we were solving rationals. Do you remember when we had to go back and we had to look to see if something made the denominator 0? So if I got 2 for an answer and x minus 2 was in my denominator, what did I have to do? I had to delete it. I had to throw it out. Now, sometimes when we were doing word problems and we were talking about distance, and I got a negative number, what did I have to do? Like if I said, how far is the distance between here and my office? And we got negative 3 and 5. What would we have to do with the negative 3? Throw it out. Okay? So it's similar to that idea. But here, it makes it untrue. Because we've squared both sides, you can end up with those extraneous solutions. So we must check every single answer to make sure that we don't have to throw any out. So that is the third thing that you must do. You must check every single answer that you get. Okay? So we are going to check 27. So I've got 2 times 27 minus 5 equals 7. 2 times 27 is 54. What is 54 minus 5?
49.
Good. So then I have the square root of 49 equals 7. Does it work? Yes. So that means this is a solution. It is a solution. Okay.
Is that what we're aiming for every question?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Is that what we're aiming for every question?
Yes. That's what we're aiming for, every question. Okay? Yes, sir.
Will it be counted off, like our quizzes and tests, if we don't like do the check?
You will be counted off if you put something as an answer that needed to be thrown out. Okay? So if you get a number and you write both of them down, but one of them doesn't work, then you will get counted off. In this situation, if you didn't check, you would have gotten lucky.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So you want us to check it?
You do need to check it because you got to throw out those extraneous solutions. In this problem, on your quiz or your test, if you didn't check, you would not have lost any credit. Okay? Now, others that we do, I'll point out how you would lose credit. Okay? Okay, can I move on? Okay. Now, here I have the square root of 3a plus 4 equals negative 4. 3a plus 4 equals negative 4. Okay, so it's already isolated. So I don't have to move anything around. What do I do? Square both sides. Good. So I'm squaring this. And I'm squaring this. Okay? When I square the square root of 3a plus 4, I get no square root. I get just 3a plus 4. When I square negative 4, I get 16. Do you know how to solve this? Take about 30 seconds and solve it for me. Okay, hopefully you have subtracted 4 from both sides. Divided by 3. What did you get? A equals 4. Okay, and like we said, we have to check. Okay, I'm going to go back and do my check. Always go to your original problem to check. So I have 3 times 4 plus 4. 3 times 4 is 12. 12 plus 4 is 16. What is the square root of 16? What happens? It's not a solution. This is a situation where if you did not indicate that a equals 4 is not a solution, then you would lose points. Because a equals 4 does not work. Doesn't work. Okay? Now, it's possible that you looked at this and you thought logically, you know, there's no number, there's no way when I take the square root of a number that I'm going to get a negative. When I take the square root of a number, it's always going to be positive. Now, when it's x squared equals a number, then you do have to take the positive and the negative. So this is different. If I've got x squared equals 16, x is both positive and negative 4. But when I have the square root of 16, my answer is only positive 4. okay? And that's some mathematic principles. This plus or minus is on the outside. It's not on the inside. So that is an important thing to look. You've got to go back and look to make sure that I'm correct. Okay, so this is an example of why we check. This is why we check. Okay, now, this one, do I have my radical isolated? Do I have it isolated? Whoops, I'm sorry.
I got a question about that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
What you saying, when we get problem like this, you put no solution?
Oh, yes. So my final answer here is no solution. You could also do undefined. Yes, sir. Was that your question? Oh, perfect. Yes. Thank you for making me go back and talk about that. Okay? We good? Can we go? Okay. So now I'm looking at this problem. Does this problem have my radical isolated? Is it on one side? Yes, it is. The square root of 2t minus 4 is on one side. The other side has t minus 2. I am going to square both sides. I'm going to square both sides. When I square the square root of 2t minus 4, I get 2t minus 4. How do I square t minus 2? What do I have to do? I do have to distribute. We also call that FOIL. Okay, FOIL. So I'm going to do t minus 2 times t minus 2. I want you to FOIL. Take about 30 seconds and FOIL. T times negative 2. Okay, t times t is t squared. Those are my first. Outer is negative 2. I'm sorry, t times negative 2, I get negative 2t. Inner is negative 2 times t, that's negative 2t. Last is negative 2 times negative 2, which is positive 4. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and combine those like terms in the middle. So I'm left with 2t minus 4 equals t squared minus 4t plus 4. Now, this is a quadratic. What makes it a quadratic is it's squared. Your t value is squared. How do I solve quadratics? What do I have to do? What do I have to set it equal to? I heard it. 0, okay? So you're going to subtract 2t from both sides and you're going to add 4. I want you to do that now. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to do that. I want you to solve this quadratic. We are going to go back to that next week. So solve this quadratic. You okay?
Yes.
Once we get to the 2t minus 4 equals t squared minus 4t plus 4, we've got to set it equal to 0 and factor. Anytime that you've got something squared, that's what we do. Anytime you've got something squared, we set it equal to 0. In 144, you'll set everything equal to 0. That's squared to the third, to the fourth, that kind of thing. That's how you solve all of those higher powers. Okay, so I've subtracted 2t from both sides and I've added 4. This is my trinomial that can be factored. T squared minus 6t plus 8. Okay, I know we kind of left that behind a month or so ago, but that is going to come back up next week. T squared minus 6t plus 8 factors to t minus 2 and t minus 4. T minus 2 equals 0, t minus 4 equals 0. My solutions are 2 and 4. You aren't done. One of those might not work. They both might not work. We have to check them. We have to check them. Okay? So I am going to check the number 2 first. Okay? So I have 2t, or 2 times 2, minus 4 equals 2 minus 2. 2 times 2 is 4, minus 4 is 0. So I have the square root of 0. Am I allowed to take the square root of 0? Okay, try it. Pull out your phone, try it. Square root of 0. Ask Siri. Somebody say, hey Siri, what's the square root of 0?
What's the square root of 0?
Is she going to talk to us?
0 is 0.
Okay. Siri has spoken. What is the square root of 0? 0. So it is allowed. Okay? Okay, you can't have a negative in there, but you can have 0. The square root of 0 is 0. 0 times 0 is 0, so the square root of 0 is 0. Okay? Now, let's check 4. Okay, so this one is okay. We're going to keep 2. 4. I've got the square root of 2 times 4 minus 4 equals 4 minus 2. 2 times... Okay. 2 times 4 is 8. 8 minus 4 is?
4.
Good. What's 4 minus 2?
2.
Square root of 4 is 2. So does this one work? Yes. So you can have both work. You can have neither work. You can have one work. You've got to check. This is a situation. If you didn't check it, you would have gotten lucky and you would have gotten them both right. But it is a good idea to check. Okay? I am. I had my note written in a different place today, but yes, it's recorded. Okay, are we ready? Okay. Now, let's look at this one. This one looks a little bit different. What is inside the radical? Or what is inside the square root? Just x. The only thing in there is x. Is my radical isolated? No, it's not. What do I need to do? Move my 6. So I'm going to subtract 6. I have to do that first. I've got to move that 6 over before I can do anything else. So minus 6 minus 6. So I have the square root of x equals x minus 6. And I actually don't have to put that there yet. Okay? What's my next step? Square both sides. Because what I do to one side, I've got to do to the other. So I square both sides. Okay? So the square root of x is x. What am I going to do with x minus 6 times x minus 6? FOIL. Okay, I'm going to give you 2 minutes, and I want you to take that all the way. Go all the way with this one. Let me find my 2 minutes. There it is. Okay, what did we have to do first? FOIL. Okay, x times x is x squared. X times negative 6 is negative 6x. Negative 6 times x, negative 6x. Negative 6 times negative 6 plus 36. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and combine like terms. And at this point, I am able to identify it as a quadratic because of the square. So I've got to set it equal to 0. This x over here is 1x. I subtract 1x from both sides. 0 equals x squared minus 13x plus 36. Can that be factored?
Yes.
Yes. My product is positive 36. My sum is negative 13. My numbers are x minus 9 and x minus 4. Okay, so I have x minus 9 equals 0, x minus 4 equals 0. Now, before we're done, what do we have to do? We got to check it. If we don't check it, we may miss an extraneous solution. So I'm going to check 9 first. The square root of 9 plus 6 equals 9. Okay? Square root of 9 is 3 plus 6 is 9. Does it work?
Yep.
Yes. Now I've got to check 4. Square root of 4 plus 6 equals 4. Square root of 4 is 2. 2 plus 6 is 8. So what's going on?
It's wrong.
Doesn't work. So I've got to throw this one out. My only solution is x equals 9. 4 is an extraneous solution. Okay, so you can't count on it just being negative numbers or extraneous. You can't count on one of them working and one of them not. You've got to check them all. Okay? Questions about this one? Okay.